year is the early 7th century. Look upon the world and you will see two colossal empires, the heirs of the old order locked in a death grip. To the west, the Byzantine Empire, the resilient inheritor of Rome, controlled Anatolia, the Levant, and the rich breadbasket of Egypt. To the east, the Sasanian Empire, the ancient, magnificent, and highly centralized Persian state, held sway over Iran, Mesopotamia, and parts of the Arabian frontier. For decades, these two superpowers had engaged in a cycle of near-continuous, devastating conflict. The final, most brutal chapter was the Byzantine-Sasanian War of 602 to 628 AD. This was a war of total attrition, a catastrophic struggle that drained both empires of men, resources, and spirit. By the time the dust settled, both giants were militarily exhausted and politically destabilized. They had inadvertently created a historic opening. A vast power vacuum lay across the most strategic lands on Earth. The old world had spent itself, leaving the stage clear for a new, unifying force to emerge from the most unlikely of places, the desolate, fragmented Arabian Peninsula. The Arabian Peninsula was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a candidate for global dominance. It was a fragmented world. Its people were mainly nomadic Bedouin tribes, constantly engaged in minor skirmishes and lacking any form of political unity. Life was governed by tribal loyalty, not imperial law. This fragmentation was a weakness, but it also masked a potent, untapped energy. When a revolutionary movement emerged, it did not have to dismantle existing powerful political structures. Instead, it only needed to harness the raw, martial energy of the tribes and provide a single, unifying ideological core. And that core arrived in the early 7th century in the person of the Prophet Muhammad, born in Mecca around 570 AD. Muhammad began preaching in 610 AD, delivering a message of strict monotheism and social justice that both challenged and resonated with the existing traditions of the region. The message of Islam, submission to one God, Allah, cut through the complexity of tribal loyalties and polytheistic practices. It provided the ultimate unifying identity. Crucially, the nascent Islamic movement was both a religious and a political movement. The journey from Mecca to Medina, the Hijra, was not just a flight, it was the foundation of the first unified state. It transformed the Prophet from a religious leader into a statesman and military commander. The success of Muhammad in uniting the multitude of previously warring tribes under the banner of a single faith was unprecedented. This was the first, most difficult, and most critical conquest. It was a political conquest of the spirit, laying the strategic, human foundation for all the military conquests that followed.
The initial strength of Islam was its cohesion, but its rapid military expansion began after the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD. This is where the true military revolution began. His successors, the caliphs of the Rashidun Caliphate, the rightly guided caliphs, faced the immense task of preserving the newfound unity and directing the energy of the unified Arab forces. They launched a series of military campaigns that were astonishingly swift and successful. The Arab armies poured out of the Arabian Peninsula, filling the exact power vacuum left by the financially crippled and militarily exhausted Byzantine and Sasanian empires. The timing was a confluence of historical opportunity and mobilized, focused energy. The initial expansion was not a slow, grinding imperial advance. It was a blitzkrieg, a rapid series of tactical victories that targeted the weak points of the two remaining empires. The Arab forces possessed superior mobility, honed by generations of desert life, and a fierce, unwavering ideological motivation that few of their tired, often conscripted, imperial opponents could match.
Byzantine Empire was the first target. The Arab forces struck at its wealthiest, closest, and most crucial eastern provinces, Syria and Palestine. Within just 2 decades, Muslim forces had taken both regions from Byzantine control. The famed city of Damascus fell quickly, and the decisive battle came soon after. The speed of this victory was not only due to Arab tactics, but also to the fact that the local populations, exhausted by the Byzantine-Sasanian wars and often alienated by religious and fiscal policies, often viewed the Arabs as preferable or inevitable rulers. The conquest was so rapid that it shattered the perception of Byzantine invincibility in the east. It secured the northern frontier of Arabia and provided the first rich arable land outside the peninsula, allowing the emerging caliphate to secure resources and manpower for the next phase of its astonishing campaign.
The fate of the Sasanian Empire of Persia was even more dramatic. While the Byzantines, though defeated in the Levant, managed to survive in Anatolia and Constantinople, the Sasanian Empire was completely dismantled. The Persians had been weakened by internal strife and the recent crushing war with the Byzantines. The Arab armies, utilizing their signature mobility, penetrated the heartland of the Persian Empire, a land of ancient cities, complex administration, and vast wealth. By 651 AD, in less than 20 years, the mighty Sasanian state, an empire that had dominated the region for 4 centuries, was entirely gone. Its provinces were absorbed, its royalty extinguished, and its administration replaced. The conquest of Persia was not merely a military victory, it was an act of total, epoch-defining destruction and replacement. A feat almost unmatched in history for its speed and finality. The great historical rivalry of Rome, Byzantium versus Persia had finally ended, not by the victory of one over the other, but by the triumph of a completely new external force.
While the Byzantine Empire was still reeling from the loss of the Levant, the Arab armies launched an audacious assault on Egypt. Egypt was strategically vital. It was the wealthiest province of the Byzantine Empire, the breadbasket that supplied Constantinople and much of the Mediterranean. Its conquest was an economic and strategic blow that the Byzantines could never fully recover from. The Muslim forces captured Egypt by the year 642. The campaign was marked by rapid movement and the capture of key cities like Alexandria. The local Coptic Christian population, often at odds with the Greek Orthodox theology of Constantinople, sometimes welcomed the new rulers who offered a degree of tolerance and less burdensome taxation than the previous imperial masters. With the conquest of Egypt, the Rashidun Caliphate had, in just over 2 decades, established itself as the single, dominant imperial power in the Middle East. It controlled Mesopotamia, Persia, the Levant, and Egypt, stretching from North Africa to the borders of India.
Before we delve into the core reasons why these armies were unstoppable, if you find this deep dive into military history fascinating, take a moment to hit the subscribe button below. Your support allows us to continue bringing you the untold stories of how power shifts and empires rise and fall. The first undeniable factor in the success of the conquests was the geopolitical situation. No matter the prowess of the Arab armies, they would not have defeated the full might of the Byzantine and Sasanian empires at their zenith. The two superpowers had fought each other to a standstill. Their treasuries were empty, their armies were depleted and demoralized, and their border garrisons were often months behind on their pay. The famous Sasanian Empire had virtually collapsed into internal chaos. The Arab forces did not just defeat these empires, they stepped into an empty throne, swiftly filling a power vacuum that was not of their making. The timing was a historical accident, but the execution was pure strategic genius. The second factor was Islam itself. It provided the unity that the warring tribes of Arabia had always lacked. The concept of the Ummah, the community of believers, superseded tribal, clan, and ethnic loyalties. It replaced centuries of localized feuding with a singular common purpose. This religious identity became the ideological foundation of a new imperial order. Furthermore, the Arabian martial tradition was perfectly suited for rapid, long-range conquest. The Bedouins were unparalleled in desert mobility, utilizing camels and light cavalry. They could appear rapidly, strike decisively, and disappear before the heavier, slower infantry armies of the Byzantines or Sasanians could react. The combination of fierce, unified religious devotion and unmatched military mobility was an overwhelming advantage against the exhausted forces they faced. Contrary to the common narrative of brutal conquest, the early Islamic Caliphate's success was also rooted in its administrative policies. The early caliphs were pragmatic rulers. They did not demand mass conversion. Instead, they adopted a system of governance that proved stable and appealing to many in the conquered lands. Christian, Jewish, and other religious minorities, known as dhimmis, were often protected. They were allowed to practice their faiths, maintain their community laws, and were exempt from military service, though they were subject to specific legal and fiscal distinctions. For many local populations who had suffered under the intense persecution or heavy taxation of the Byzantine or Sasanian regimes, this new arrangement was a relief. This policy minimized internal resistance, allowing the Caliphate to consolidate its massive territorial gains with remarkable speed and stability. The conquests marked a civilizational turning point. Beyond military might, the Caliphate ensured its dominance by establishing Arabic as the new administrative language of the vast empire. This was a subtle but profound change. Over time, Arabic gradually supplanted the long-established Greek, Aramaic, and Persian that had been used for centuries. As the language of administration, law, and eventually high culture, it became the glue that held the massive territory together. The Caliphate's long-term success was not just assured by its armies, but by its ability to impose a unifying language that eventually led much of the region's population to adhere to Islam and speak Arabic. The conquests of the Rashidun Caliphate in those 2 decades were perhaps the most significant in world history. They were not merely a shift in borders, they were the birth of a new imperial order. The rapid success laid the foundation for the massive Umayyad Caliphate and eventually the golden age of the Abbasids. By filling the vacuum of the Byzantine-Sasanian exhaustion and harnessing the martial energy of the unified Arab tribes with a powerful ideological core, Islam did not just conquer the world, it transformed it. It permanently reshaped the map of the Middle East and set the stage for the next 1,000 years of history.
The story of the Rashidun Caliphate is a masterclass in military and political mobilization. If you were a Byzantine general watching this astonishing speed of conquest, what single strategic advantage would you fear the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the military history that changed the world.